Hey.
Cheers. Woohoo.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy Wine Wednesday.
Happy Wine Wednesday.
Canadian wine lovers, Carl's Wine Club members across the country. It's 5 o'clock. It's time to pop a Canadian wines. It's time to celebrate how amazing our life is and how incredible the Canadian wines are and how freaking happy we are to be part such of an amazing community of Canadian wine lovers, working with so many amazing wineries and to have such a great group of Carl's Wine Club members. So Mira, I cheers to that. I had a burst of gratefulness so I just wanted to share with every one of us. So yoo-hoo! Happy
Cheers.
Wine Wednesday.
Happy Wine Wednesday. You know, I got to say something. The last few weeks, the last few months have been really tough for me. I think for us, Carl, hey?
Yeah,
for many
absolutely.
reasons. Pretty much after that heart attack, that Carl had back in May, we were on such a fast bandwagon. And then we fell off pretty hard, and it was pretty hard to get back on. But I have to say, we are coming back. Daryl, nice to see you. With a vengeance in so many incredible ways. And I also have to say that 2025 will be our 5-year anniversary as a club. We're going to be celebrating in style in Niagara for the 3rd edition of the Pan-Canadian Masterclass. That is literally the week that 5 years ago we started the club. And we have some big plans for 2025 for Carl's Wine Club, don't we, Carl?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're going to need your input. I'm going to be sending a survey, which is something we've wanted to do a lot more than we have to get more feedback from you guys. But we're going to make some big and good changes in 2025. We want to not just double the club, but maybe triple or quadruple the wine lovers in the club.
Well, guess what? I mean, look how it looks right now, right? With a group of super involved, really dedicated VIP members where they're coming to the event, they're sharing on social media, they're part of our life. Could you imagine that? Quadruple, how incredible it would be. We can do events all over this is so exciting.
Yeah. So one thing that's fun, you guys, that's coming up that you may or may not have seen is December 7th. We're doing a Zoom. We haven't done those since the good old days of COVID, but an actual Zoom where we can meet each other and have chats. And Carl and I will share our locals guide to the Okanagan for those planning trips out here, wanting to know more about the terroir and what you can expect in each region and all the insider locals tips and tricks. So we're going to do that December 7th, which is a Saturday afternoon. And guess what? We are inviting wine lovers from Seattle and possibly other parts of the United States to join that call, which is pretty wild because we've never done that before.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. And also that's mean that we're going to, let's say, get the road and get the path ready. We're going to start the whole process when we're in California in January as well, right? So, because we're going to be out there talking with Americans about our Canadian wine business and how they do things and how did they open up the borders from all of these states, so to have to free the trades and all that. So it's going to be really cool.
It's called the Free the Grapes Conference, and they've had it for 20 years. And all the money from the conference funds lobbyists who took stock of all the laws that need to change to make grapes truly free in the U.S. for American wineries. And they changed those laws. Thousands of those laws over the last 20 years were changed because of that. And I'm like, well, maybe we should be doing something like that in Canada. I mean, we only have 9 jurisdictions across the provinces here, not 48 like they have in the States, right? So
yeah. Well, last time I checked, it was 10, but I'll give you a pass with 9.
Yeah. I mean, it's the provinces and the territories, really.
That's you don't count Quebec.
That's right. Yeah, you can't count it.
So we have a bunch of people from all over the country
We
right
do.
now tuning
We
in. We
do.
have Stacy and Jeff Labano from Ottawa. We have obviously Daryl from Ontario,
Woo!
Ken from Calgary. People are tuning in from all over the
Joanne
place.
and Alain from
Joanne from
Montreal.
Quebec. Joanne, Alain, je vais être à Montréal à la fin du mois de décembre pour la grande dégustation au
Du
Grand
mois
Quai
de
du Vieux-Port.
novembre. Du mois de novembre, pas de décembre.
Oh, j'étudie moi, au mois de décembre, à la fin du mois. Donc,
Yeah.
on se reparle si vous êtes disponible. À la fin du mois de novembre, je suis à Montréal. I was just saying here in French to our French-speaking members that I'm going to be in Montreal at the end of November at one of the biggest Quebec wine tasting at the old port of Montreal. It's called La Grande Dégustation, and I'll be there for 4 days talking about the Dobbins wine. So it's really, really exciting for me to be there with the assistant winemaker at Dobbins, and we're going to talk about the story and the incredible quality of the Dobbins wine. But right now, it's completely irrelevant because we have behind me 11 wines from Stratus Vineyard, one of the iconic vineyard and winery on Niagara, in Niagara on the Lake, one of our very favorite for a while now. But since we visited their establishment a couple times in the last year, it became almost our favorite of Niagara. I mean, we love these wines. We love talking with them. We love promoting their wines. And this week, we have 11 wines. Why that many? Because it was so hard to choose. It was so freaking hard to choose. And we put together an incredible lineup of all 92 plus all the way to 95 points wines. So yeah, check it out. If Mira can put the link here in the comments so you guys can check
Yes,
the
to check
tasting notes and scores and all of
notes
that.
if you want to order. Now, I was going to blind taste you on a wine, Carl, but I think we already have our guest in the green room, Dean Stoyka, from winemaker from Stratus. And you know what? They had a big event in Toronto, I believe, tonight. And
It's raw. It's raw. It's the raw event. So every year in Toronto, they put like these like an incredible show where it's all of the natural wine community who are gathering in Toronto, and yeah, that's the week of raw. So
yeah, exactly. Daryl says you're gonna make Marcel cry. That's what he said so carefully. He said almost our favorite winery.
Yeah, I said one of our very favorite. I mean, there's a few, and in my one of my favorite, one of that includes Bellaterra, that includes Ferox, that includes Stonebridge and Lely. But I will tell you all, you guys, that Stratus is right up there at the very, very top. That's for sure. Mira, how about you tell us just quickly before we bring Dean's in?
Yeah.
What was your highlight of the incredible event that we've put together at Stratus back in August? What was your highlight? If you had one moment that you like think about it when you go to bed at night.
Well, I just have to say something about our experience at Stratus. And I mean, Daryl, you were there. You can attest to this. We came from a full day of
Joanne and Alain were tuning in tonight. They were there as well.
Yeah, and they had been there earlier that year. One of the things that is fascinating to me about Stratus, and I put it in the subject for tonight's chat, I said design thinking for wine. It just feels like there is a certain element of like this synchronicity that they create, not just in the wines, but in how their culture is. And when we went to Stratus the day before, we had done a full day of vineyard touring with Thomas Batchelder, which was like a highlight of our lives, amazing. But it was so much more like the work of a genius, you know, and then like not as, let's say, I don't know, how do I put this without put it like it was we ran overtime for everything. Like it was so much more like organic and it was amazing. But then when we got to Stratus, they were so organized, but not in an overbearing way. But it was just such a smooth flow and so organized and seamless. And it was just like suddenly all these beautiful wines are coming out. And then Dean's telling us these incredible things about all the vessels and barrels and things that they do that I guess they have to be like super organized and have this design thinking behind all they do because it's very complex stuff. Like it's simple, but it's complex. Like there's all these different types of vessels that they use. And anyway, so my point is that I am fascinated by the thought process behind what they do. And these are some of the most interesting wines I think we've ever tasted.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
really
Including the 95 point Stratus 2012. That is right up there in my very, very top wine tasted this year. Like, yeah. I
like
know.
for example, they have a red blend with 4 white varietals in it.
It sure is.
I mean, I've never heard of anything like that. And it's freaking delicious, right? So, yeah, I can't wait to hear more. So
the poor guy is probably on in his car or like somewhere at the hotel lobby. So let's bring him in.
We were going to pre-record it, and Dean was kind enough to say, you know what? I am willing to just step away and make it work so we can talk live because it's just so much authentic and more fun when we're actually live together. So we really appreciate that. Dean, thank you so much for joining us.
Wow, thanks so much
Great
for having
to
me,
see
Carl.
you.
Mira, how are you
Jeez,
guys doing?
that's a big card. That's a really big card that you have right there.
You know what? Raw, as you were saying, I was there doing some tastings. It finished at 6 p.m. And I would have been just slightly late, but you said, oh, come on for 8:10. And that gave me enough time to get from downtown Toronto to Niagara-on-Lake. So it was perfect timing.
Yeah.
What? Okay,
I drive pretty fast.
You chartered a private jet or what?
So used to driving a tractor around the vineyard, and when you're on the road, you just you pretend like there's no one else there, and you just go.
That's too good.
Hey, how is the show, Dean?
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, me and JL as well, our founder winemaker, we love to travel. We love to taste wines from around the world. And so we're always super excited and really lucky when the world comes to you right here. You know, we're lucky to be making wine next to a large city like Toronto, where winemakers from around the world will bring their wines for us to taste. With me not having to travel, to Austria or to Italy or wherever all the time to taste these wines. So it was great. The wines this year were fantastic. There was a lot of styles that you see similar to what we're doing at Stratus these days. A lot of amphora wines, a lot of red and white blends blended together. So red wines with whites blended into them, which is becoming more and more fashionable again. Like the Alto that we'll talk about tonight, and then a lot of ancestral wines. So pretty exciting to try and see all these wines from around the world and the quality and just the dedication and passion of the winemakers.
I would like to remind you that the last time we talked, you and me, you were sitting in Portugal.
Yeah,
that's the last time we talk on Zoom, you and me, and now like we're doing it. Absolutely.
It's a busy life when you're making wine.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start. So for people who are just tuning in, we have a good attendance here live tonight.
Great.
Dean Stoyka is the winemaker at Stratus Vineyard in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So this week we're featuring Stratus in Carl's Wine Club, our weekly feature. We have 11 wines. Now, Dean, you say, well, we're talking about busy life and all of that. Let's start with what just ended, couple like this week, or what you are about to finish. That's one swing at the bat that you have every year. It's called harvest. Okay, yeah. So you've been working your tail off since last year to get your vines settled, get ready for this year. You experienced a beautiful growing season, and now you're just about to finish harvest. How's 2024 for you guys?
2024 is going to be, a year to remember. This fall was quite incredible. We had a perfect amount of precipitation in the summer, and then the fall was dry, warm, sunny. We got 2 days of rain, last week, and those were maybe the first 2 days of rain that we had in 2 months. It felt like it was just beautiful and sunny forever, which harvest can really make or break a season, especially in a cool climate region like Niagara. We're harvesting all the way. We're picking Cabernet Sauvignon and finishing it tomorrow. We finished Semillon yesterday, We have a little bit of Cabernet Franc to pick on the weekend, and then we're done our harvest. So you can imagine we're going pretty late. We are mid-November. Some years we're going into December if we have to, but this year was so fantastic that we're going to be done mid-November. And I couldn't be any happier than to have this kind of weather for fermentation and winemaking and wine growing.
Was talking with, well, you probably seen him at Raw this week, but Bill Riddlemeyer had one of his weather station at Southbrook Vineyard sometime last mid last week. It was 27.9 degrees in Niagara on the lake. I mean,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Yeah, he said he thought it was the warmest place maybe in Canada. So I just saw him at Raw. So you're right. I saw him there, and he was telling me that story that at their place, where the weather station, the airport are, was maybe the warmest spot in Canada. Pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, I believe I spoke with many influential people in the wine industry about the 24 vintage, and I think everyone's telling that like it's the same that I'm hearing. It's going to be a beautiful, incredible, balanced vintage who can rival with the 2020. So it's very exciting for the future.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing people will find from 2024 as opposed to 2020, which is another amazing year, is we have maybe a little bit more acidity. So this is going to be really exciting because 2020 was warm, hot, and dry from basically bud break all the way until picking time. This year we had a fairly cooler July. It wasn't crazy hot in the summer, quite a bit of rain. And so that really preserved acidity. And so I'm coming in with acid levels that are about a gram more per liter than what I was getting in 2020, which is going to be really exciting. We love acidity in Niagara and in cool climate winemaking.
Absolutely. So okay, now we talk about the quality of this vintage coming up. It's very exciting for everybody. Let's backtrack 25 years ago. I would like our members to understand a little bit how Stratus started and what was the vision at the beginning versus what it is now. And I think that's a very linear way of thinking since the very beginning. Things hasn't changed too much in the owner's vision. So you guys has accomplished a lot in 25 years.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning when we started out, JL Grew was our founding winemaker. He came from Trias, born in Loire Valley. He studied in Burgundy and Bordeaux, so he had a great education, great experience. Brought his knowledge from France to Canada. And when we started Stratus, we were really into the art of assemblage wines. We were making a beautiful white wine that you wouldn't find anywhere else in Canada. A blend of Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. He was planting Semillon, Sauvignon Blanc, Viognier. We had some Marsanne in the vineyard. And then we had the Stratus Red. And, for Stratus Red, we had your 5 Bordeaux varieties, but he was trying things like Syrah and Sangiovese, Tempranillo, Tannat. So a lot of innovation in the vineyard side of things. And then we built this winery that was fully focused on gravity flow winemaking and also innovation to be able to respect tradition by using innovation. And sort of we took that DNA from the very beginning and we've been building that up over the last 25 years and making small nuanced approaches, still keeping the essence of Stratus alive, the Stratus Red, the Stratus White, the art of assemblage, the idea of blending. Tonight we'll talk about blending white into reds. We'll talk about field blend ancestral. So there's all this idea that you have this vineyard with this raw material in there, and the art of winemaking is what do you do with that raw material and how do you express it in its best way. And from day one to now, that's never changed. Everything has stayed the same, with these small improvements year after year after year.
Joe, you guys are going to celebrate your 25th anniversary next year, right?
Yep, it's coming up.
That's coming. That's going to be, really cool. So another quarter century of innovation. And I love your quote because you're talking a lot about tradition while innovating, right? So, and you see it with the clay amphora that you guys are going back to a little bit more of the basic of the wine instead of pushing the envelope forward. You guys going a little bit like more towards the tradition.
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of both ways to do it. We like the innovation, but we don't want to push it. Another quote I always say is evolution, not revolution. So we don't want to get anything that's changing wine so much that it's, I don't know, a grape derived beverage or something like that we have to change the name. We're still sticking with these traditional methods of time on skins, red wine maceration for 30 days in an amphora or an oak fermenter and, pumping that juice back over to get the color without using, chemical processes to change that or augment the wine. And so it's kind of nice because when you feel like this really holistic way that it's a handmade product when you do winemaking in this traditional way, but there's always ways to be a little bit more innovative to find new techniques. You know, the idea of gravity flow. To a winemaker 200 years ago, they would have to make wine in a hill. We put tanks on elevators, you know, and that's innovative. And it's not a huge innovation. It's not a revolutionary idea, but it's definitely an evolutionary idea, and it allows us to make more, you know, complex, better quality wines and using these small innovative techniques without going too far into the science and still respecting what winemakers have been doing for the last 10,000 years and for what consumers have been drinking for the last 10,000 years. We don't want to change this product completely. We want to find new fun avenues with still being wine.
Mira was talking, when I asked Mira before we brought you in, I asked Mira what was like one of the things that she really remember when we talk about Stratus. And she said, oh, you guys are, you're so organized. You guys are so, for me, to me, it's the plot of land that you have where you're sitting on. To me, that's the home vineyard. What fascinates me, it's your, I think it's 50 acres, 35, 50 acres?
56 acres.
56 acre with 14 varietals or 17 or whatever. I don't.
16, yeah. Yeah.
There
You're
you
pretty
go.
close on all the data.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there, right around it. That's what's fascinating me. Since the very beginning, you guys have established your headquarter of your raw material and the way it developed over the year, and having these varietals like Tanat, like Sangiovese, and like all of these varietals that we're not used to see around here, but still they are so important in the core of the art of assemblage. That's what you're doing. So tell us a little bit more about the evolution of the Stratus vineyards.
Yeah, well, you know, earlier when Mira was talking, she's like, "What would be the term?" I was like, only that I could think in my mind was like, maybe I hope, and I think I like to think that we're a bit refined. You know, like we're trying to refine this product to coming from vineyard and the weather and dealing with all this kind of madness that you have to do to bring into the winery and doing the right thing to see it through to its end of way. So refined is kind of, I would say, is what we've been working in the vineyard. Actually, over the last 25 years, we've become more refined. So we have 16 different varieties, 56 acres, planted on 48 different blocks. And we're taking advantage of the glacial soil that the last glacial period 12,000 years ago left us. So we have 4 different soil types. There was a glacier here 12,000 years ago. It was called the Wisconsin glaciation period. When that glacier melted, it left different soil types to our vineyard. And JL, being a very smart, nuanced winemaker, when we took over the property at Stratus in 2000, sort of looked at getting the vineyard mapped and seeing the different soil types, and then decided to say, well, if we plant Chardonnay in that soil type, we should plant some more Chardonnay, same clone, same rootstock, in another soil type, and then we'll take 2 different clones of Chardonnay on different rootstocks and plant them in the same sort of area. So what we did was we sparsed out these 16 varieties to all these different little blocks by taking advantage of slope aspect, soil chemistry, and then the variety itself, to be able to slowly find out where the best wines from the different soil types are coming from, so we can make the Stratus red and white blend. And now we've evolved into the white label and, you know, single block, or even, you know, half of a single block. So we're refining our knowledge in the vineyard, and our ability to farm grapes is getting better and better every year. And that's sort of the evolutionary process of Stratus. Sort of, you know, about the Mira was saying about our, you know, how organized we are. We try and be like that in the vineyard. You know, we have all the data going back to 2005. We have all the weather data, all the soil pits that we've dug with pictures, and all the data on the soil, you know, chemistry that we did in 2005, 2008, 2015, 2020, 2023. And so we're using all this sort of real-time data, almost like we're like a hedge fund. You know, we're using all these numbers and data to help us make informed decision, and then use the art of winemaking to express what we're finding.
That's fascinating. And when you end up with 16 varietals in a 56 acre, 50 something acres, I mean, wow. And yes, being organized should be and must be something critical when it's time to get out there and make sure that everything is ready for what you're doing right now, which is called harvest. And yeah, wow, that part for me is like the most fascinating. So before we jumped into the outstanding vineyard, the outstanding lineup that I have behind me, what's in your glass tonight? What do you have here?
Well, we're going to talk about it tonight. I'm drinking one of the wines that we were going to be speaking of this evening, or the Stratus Red. So I got a
Oh,
little glass
hi, here
Stratus
you
Red.
go. At 94 points. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, yeah. I wanted to ask. So, JL Grew is the founding winemaker. You've been there for a while now, and you've been learning a lot. You've been working with JL. I mean, JL has an incredible reputation on the, like, when you talk about among people who've been working in the industry for a while, like
Yeah.
everyone, like either kind of mad scientist or like a veteran of the, like he's an iconic personage. Which impact that jail had in your career? What can you say like about like how which kind of a mentor he is for you or was
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the luckiest winemakers in the world to be able to learn under a winemaker like JL. Like every winemaker eventually makes wine their career, and they're going to learn that from somebody. They're going to travel around. I kind of struck, a jackpot when I met JL, and I sort of knew that right away. JL, if you have a 10-minute conversation with him, most people realize you're probably talking to the smartest person in the room, even though he would never admit that, but he usually is. And also the most well-traveled and knows his history and knows science and also knows how to think, outside the box, and so and is organized. So for me, when I met JL and started learning under JL, I was a young winemaker, and I had, dreams of aspirations of being a winemaker within 5 years, and you have all these kind of crazy ideas and stuff. And JL was very kind and nice to sort of understand what a really hungry young winemaker needs, and that they're going to be probably a lot to handle. And I didn't realize in the beginning, but JL was very patient and gave me my own projects to try and my own things to do, but also was pretty hard on me. He had high expectations, fully well knowing that to sit in JL's chair as a winemaker would take a lot of guts. It takes a lot of knowledge and experience. And so he put me through the ringer for a long time, but it was totally worth it. And I used to question it and be like, in the early days, like, what's the deal with this guy? Why is he
Yeah,
being so hard on me?
exactly right.
But by year 5 or 6, actually, when I first started managing the vineyard, JL, promoted me to be a vineyard manager when I was 24 years old. I started Stratus when I was 20. And so I was in the cellars for 4 years, and the vineyard manager left, and that was like a huge deal. And when you're 20, you're I don't know what the word is, maybe kind of cocky. You think you know
Oh yeah,
everything.
you know everything at
You know
20, right?
everything. Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. And then when I started managing the vineyard and had this huge responsibility, it's the first time in my life I ever had such big responsibility. It was weighty. It was a lot of weight on my shoulders that I wasn't ready for. And you have some imposter syndrome, and you have to break through that imposter syndrome to get to the other side, to really have the knowledge, the ability, and then the perseverance, or I don't know what the word is, yeah, the courage to
Yeah, and
even
the
do it.
grit, right? The courage
Yeah.
and the
You
grit, like
think
to
you have
fight.
it until you're stuck in that moment where you're actually facing adversity as a young person. And I always say this to young people, to get a mentor who puts you through that kind of obstacle course. Because when I was 24, it was super easy. When I was 25, it was hell. And by the time I was 27, I had broken through, and I was like, okay, I have a whole new respect for winemaking and viticulture and what JL has been doing the last 40 years. And then, it was kind of the golden ages, from probably 27 to, until today, when me and JL, we just sit around, have a glass of wine, and have a good time and talk about more high level winemaking and things like that. And it's pretty enjoyable. Versus when I was younger, it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of disagreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so you grew up as a winemaker, as a career winemaker with that vineyard. Is there any like one type of grape that you would say that I kind of grew in the vineyard with you, that you had a really soft spot in that vineyard to say, hey, you know what?
Great question.
I feel like that grape varietal grew with me.
Yeah, you could maybe say that for Semillon. Semillon is an unusual varietal for Niagara. When
Yeah.
we when I got to Niagara, we were still trying to find out how Semillon is made, and we really, I just said we picked Semillon yesterday. So in the early days, we were picking Semillon sometime in early October. Nowadays, we're picking mid to late November. We make a botrytis Semillon, so we started refining how we can get Semillon to hang on the vine for so long. So certainly, I think me and Semillon grew up together in the vineyard. Whereas varieties like Cab Franc and Jail, being a Loire Valley native and knowing Cab Franc like it's his blood, as much as I love Cab Franc, that was already a JL thing. He knew all about Cab Franc, and sort of how to master that. But Semillon is something we learned sort of together, and I felt like me and Semillon, we came up together.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, let's get to the what's behind me right now, and we won't go through the whole 11 wines, but there's a few that I really want to touch, and I want to start with the field blend ancestral method. To be honest, you and me sitting together at the wine bar, we can spend 6 hours just talking about that wine, only
Yeah.
that wine. I mean, there's so much. First, I would like you to bring to our members the understanding of what exactly ancestral method means
Yeah.
for a an average wine enthusiast.
Yeah. Well, that's a complicated question, but I can give you a complicated answer because there's a lot of disagreement. Tonight I was with a winemaker from Penedès, Spain, who's a good friend of mine, and I visit his winery there, and he makes an ancestral method. And even me and him don't agree necessarily on how our ancestrals are kind of made. But I'll tell you historically how they're made, and that's the main thing of what's important because that sort of falls in the evolution of how we make ancestrals today. But ancestral method predates champagne. So it's kind of how the monks of Champagne were making Champenoise method champagne in the 1600s and the 1700s. And then Madame Clicquot of Veuve Clicquot eventually came along and she pioneered the traditional method that we know today, which is disgorging, removing the lees, putting a fancy neck tag and a cork and a cage, and really making wine for kind of aristocrats and taking champagne from sort of monk church wine to next level, to what we know of champagne today, these very expensive sort of wines. So an ancestral wine is a little bit more rustic. It's usually non-disgorged, so it still has the lees. And what would happen in the 16, 1700s is the monks of Champagne would manage the vineyards. They would normally pick everything together. So not everyone did it that way, but some monks believed in this, that they had Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay. They'd pick all that together. So that was my first idea where I said, we should be making this as a field blend because back then the art of assemblage in Champagne, it was kind of in Bordeaux, but they didn't have to deal with that in Champagne. They didn't have the weather occurrences like Bordeaux does, where they would have that because they were picking sparkling. They would pick before the weather occurrences happen. So they'd pick everything together. The fermentation would start happening in barrels or in a vessel. And then because they didn't have good temperature control, it would get stuck in the winter. So there'd be some sugar left after the fermentation. And back then, the winemakers, the monks, they had no idea of sugar and yeast and
And
fermentation. They
alcohol
actually
had
thought
a
it had something.
relationship, right?
Yeah, they thought it had something to do with God. They thought it was
Yeah.
a godly process that was happening. So then around Easter, things warm up again. Spring comes around, and the fermentation would start to pick it back up. The yeast would warm up, and then they finish off that bit of sugar, and they would go to bottle. And you have to remember, this is when bottles were first starting to be invented. The first bottles that came out were the late 1600s, so they weren't very robust. If you had the wrong mix of sparkling wine, or if you bottled too soon, they would blow up in your face. Your whole cellar would explode. So they sort of worked all these years on how to refine and have this perfect little sparkle. At first, it was a negative thing for wine. Then it became a positive thing when they had bottles and they could capture that. So that's the ancestral methods. The fermentation starts in the fall. It gets stuck over the winter. It's left to age in a barrel or an amphora or a stainless steel tank all winter long. And in the spring, that fermentation starts to pick up again, and then we bottle it.
There you go. So
And
now
then no disgorging. It's got a crown cap.
yep,
Yeah, go ahead.
crown cap. And if you look at my you can see the lees here, like on the side of the bottle
Yeah.
here. You got in the 23 vintage, 41% Riesling, 30% Chardonnay, 80% Sauv Blanc, and 11% Semillon. So you really capture the essence of the Stratus vineyard in the bottle by
Yeah.
bringing everything together. So you kept the old method, field blend, everything
Yeah.
together. Let's crank it up and making a fine, really fine and delicate mousse.
Yeah, yeah. I saw this method for the first time when I was traveling in northern Italy, in Franciacorta and in Prosecco, and I was seeing these styles of ancestral method wines, and I thought that would do well in Niagara. I think that would be great. Now it's becoming you're seeing them all over the place, and pet
Yeah.
nats have taken up and all that. But when we were doing it for the first time in 2018, it was kind of a new concept, and it's meant to be consumed. So you're drinking the 23. We'll talk about the Blanc de Blanc maybe later, which is 6 7 years on the lees. This is just finished fermenting in May. And so you're already consuming it, and it's meant to be like monks would have done. The fermentation would be done. They have their bottle, and they'd start cracking that stuff and drinking it right there. It would be start going right into service, and that's how winemaking was done back then. This wine is the same way. It's a serious wine, but it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant to be consumed fresh and enjoyable.
And I think that's what I put in my notes, right? It's a to drink now type of wine, but to be extremely enjoyable. I think that's where it's now, because the freshness, to me, it's at least a third of the enjoyment. How fresh, how vibrant, the energy,
Yeah.
and you bring the leaves into that,
Acidity.
which brings softness in the mid palate. And to be honest, like the geek in me, just like I could not put down my glass. I smelled that wine for so long. And it's just, it's ever evolving from that little, that Sauvignon Blanc spark once in a while, and boom, the Riesling green apple comes in, and that lemon curds, and like there's so much going on. 93 points. I love that wine.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you enjoy it. And dry. That's the best thing. The acidity and it dry. So a lot of people ask, like, oh, does this wine have some, will have sugar? It's completely dry, you know? So it's a great wine for people who enjoy dry, sparkling, you know, like wines with good freshness and acidity.
Absolutely, the slight toastiness, like bread, with the lees, and like the way of the fermentation, just like fantastic complexity. So there's that. So while we're talking about geek and unfiltered, I would like just to show people a little something fun here, because
Must be some Chardonnay in there.
that is the unfiltered bottle with leaves, the 2021. I mean, since that, like I think it was in April when we stopped by the first time this year, and we tasted that side by side with the M401. Right, we had a little special tasting with shards. This one stood out to me at a really high level. Oh, there you go. Mira is back on the production keyboard here. And yeah, let's talk about that 2021, because I took that to Richard De Silva a couple of days ago, and it's so much fun to see his face change when he had a sip of it, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is such a special wine." So what's the idea behind the unfined, unfiltered, unleased to showcase the Chardonnay?
Well, you know, as winemakers, we know there's a little bit of a secret that we love the way our wines taste in barrel or in amphora. And when we go through filtration, the wine gets a pretty big hit to it. It's closed down and it takes time to rebound. So it's always like kind of a heartbreaking thing as a winemaker. You're tasting the barrels, the wine's incredible. You go through filtration, you go through the bottling process, and then what happened to all that structure and texture and amazingness? It comes back, but it takes time. That's why we release all our wines usually after a year or 2 years in bottle. But the idea of keeping a wine on the lees is it doesn't go through that whole process. It's unfiltered. You still have the lees, so it doesn't get pushed through these filters nearly as much. And then it's a living wine. So you have the lees in that wine. There's still bacteria. There's still yeast. There's still everything in that bottle. And those compounds are going to break down over time, and they're going to release their own aromas. It's actually the whole idea behind traditional method sparkling wine. You bottle a traditional method sparkling wine, you leave it on the lees for 5 years, 10 years, and the autolysis that happens is going to give flavor and something to the wine. The idea of this Chardonnay is the same kind of idea. And the lees is antioxidative, so we can make wine with less sulfur. It gives the wine more ageability. Those leaves are pillaging any oxygen that's going to get into the bottle, so it's giving the wine great freshness, great longevity. And then you get this sort of creaminess, this crispiness that comes with the acidity, the lees, the fruit of the Chardonnay made into a still wine, all comes together to bring great complexity. So that was the idea: is how can we get, you know, a wine that's going to have amazing texture and structure, and a filtered Chardonnay can have good texture, but with the lees you get that much more. You enhance it by that much more by keeping the lees. The roundness, yeah, exactly, that mouthfeel. You can't replicate that mouthfeel if you filter
Yeah.
the wine, no matter how hard you try.
Oh no, it's exactly, to me, that's the standout of that wine. That mouthfeel, all round and soft. That wine is, but there's also layered. I had that orange marmalade, but also in the middle, a beautiful zip of lemon who keeps the acidity right where it should be. This is a 93 plus. I'm just on the verge of 94 points with that Chardonnay. Well done. Well done. What would be, so let's talk aging potential. a wine with on lees like that, is there any different with your longevity, or you'd say this one, let's try to crack it open in its first 5 years, or that can hold the road, that can hold the road as long as the other one?
Leaves gives a wine tremendous longevity. So that wine, will probably age 20 years or 30 years or longer. JL has some on the lees wines he was making in 1994 in his cellar, and these wines, you open them today and it's amazing how much vibrancy they have, because that lees being antioxidative, so it's going to prevent browning. It's going to prevent all those oxidative characters that sort of
Yeah.
happen over time, because the oxygen just can't get to the wine. It's protected from the lees. Again, think about champagne. You crack some champagnes that were, 15 years on the lease, some crazy ones out there. You see the color and it's still like it looks like it was bottled yesterday. And you say, how's that possible? Well, the lees was protecting the wine. So this gives the wine tremendous longevity, and the lees will over time make the wine creamier and softer as well.
Okay. One more white, because there's a very big spike of popularity about Sauvignon Blanc. I think Sauvignon Blanc is a varietal who's gaining a lot of traction, and I've seen more and more of Niagara winery producing reserve Sauvignon Blanc and all that. So, and I love what I'm seeing with the growth of Sauvignon Blanc from Niagara. I absolutely love it. So this is a varietal that's been pretty important for your portfolio for a while now. This is not something new at Stratus.
No, not at all. It's, again, JL Loire Valley, he had to have Sauvignon Blanc with him when he came over to Niagara, because he loves it just like he loves Cab Franc. Same family.
Yeah, exactly. This wine, the 2023, like this is a little baby just coming out. I like freshness, incredible. There's that old world delivery into that Sauvignon Blanc. I give it a 93 points as well. I mean, I was just blown away with the freshness, but also the complexity. Sometimes with Sauv Blanc, we take it as a easy drinking, refreshing wine, but we forget that we can make these Sauv Blanc extremely complex, and they have so much to offer depending on the vessel that you're using for aging and or fermenting.
Yeah.
What's behind the secret of the 23 here? Amphora, I would guess, and maybe a little bit of neutral oak as well.
Yeah, exactly. But also the neutral oak. So I do the fermentation only in clay and steel,
Okay.
and then the aging only in oak and amphora. So the steel gets dropped for the aging, but I use it for the fermentation. I don't use the oak for the fermentation because I don't want to over extract any kind of phenolic or oak character from the fermentation. There, that's a great picture of us in the barrel cellar there.
It was awesome.
And what's also really unique about Sauvignon Blanc, a lot of people talk about Chardonnay as kind of the winemaker's wine or the winemaker's grape, because whatever you do in the vineyard, it's about what happens in the winery. That's been something a lot of people have said over the years about Chardonnay. Different styles or different winemaking characteristics can greatly change a Chardonnay. What I find about Sauvignon Blanc is sort of the wine grower's grape. It's about what you do in the vineyard, the way you expose the fruit, the clusters to the sun, and how you manipulate that in the vineyard to create flavor creation, because Sauvignon Blanc has a compound that Chardonnay doesn't have. Chardonnay's got terpenes. Sauvignon Blanc has a compound called thiols. And these thiols are what your boxwood character, some people would say cat pee, that's another thiol compound. And so these thiols are created during the growing season, and so you have to do special things in the vineyard to be able to build up those styles. And then you have to do special things in the winery to be able to extract them, to be able to get that flavor of boxwood and citrus and tropical fruit. And if you don't do a good job, they're so delicate, they can oxidize to the atmosphere. And you'll get a Sauvignon Blanc that smells like nothing. And so that's why in fermentation I like to be tighter in the steel and in the clay to keep those flavors in the fermentation, so I don't lose them, so they're not oxidized to the atmosphere. And maybe an oak barrel where it's a little bit more of an oxidative
Forest.
winemaking. And so then once I go into the aging process, so now I've created these styles. then I'm okay to go to the oak barrel because they're protected a little bit. Now they're ingrained in the wine, and now I want a little bit of oxygen to soften and make the Sauvignon Blanc more complex. And actually, what happens once you have the thiols, the chemistry of them, they're sulfur containing compounds. So if you're not careful with them and you'll give them some oxygen, they can start becoming, you can get reduction in Sauvignon Blanc, and they can start to get rotten egg smell and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of winemaking that happens in that people don't know about in Sauvignon Blanc to get this very beautiful aroma that Sauvignon Blanc's known to have, and it takes years to learn and to be able to manipulate the winemaking to get to that.
Yeah, and so that's it's everything starts with the canopy management. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I really like that. And when we say like that old adage, right? Everything starts in the vineyard. That cannot be more true than this right there, right?
Sauvignon Blanc and so like Cab Franc, Sauvignon Blanc, Cab Franc. Those are the two varieties I start with first. They're so important because the compounds and the flavors are important with the reaction of the sun on the clusters. And so we do, if you do no canopy movement at all in Sauvignon Blanc, you'll get a very green Sauvignon Blanc. It'll be like asparagus almost. And if you do all leaf removal, you'll get so much tropical fruit. So we do different types of leaf removal to add different complexity to the winemaking.
Like I can see when Mira puts herself back in between us, that's mean, okay, guys, we need to move on somewhere. I know.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. I have to say it's fascinating. I do think Dean has to go. Is there a certain time?
No, we got
No?
Let's go. We
Okay.
got another
You got
10
a bit
minutes
of
to go.
time?
If you guys want to go.
Because I wanted to jump in and say you're not being fair, Carl, because there's amazing white wines, but there's also amazing red wines at Stratus. And
I do, Dean. I told you. That's me.
Like,
Come on.
The whole time talking about the bubblies and the whites, and we have, by the way,
You know, that's the thing. I was starting to think we might be on here for 3 hours. You know, we'll just keep going and going to be American.
I was like, you haven't even gotten to the reds yet. It's going to take all night because, okay, I have to say two things though from your conversation that you haven't touched on. One is that we had your rosé of Gamay, and my favorite rosé in the country, I would say 3 years in a row, and I think Carl's too, his highest rated rosé in the country, is the Tractor and Vines rosé. It's a Pinot Noir rosé. Yeah. And
I think, Dean, as a bonus for tonight, what you're doing for us, I'm going to send you a bottle of that. Okay. I think that's on me. I'm going to send you a bottle of Tractor and Vines Pinot Noir rosé next week. Okay. Put that on the list, Mira. I think you really deserve that because what you're doing tonight after a long week of show and spending time with us at that time, it's amazing.
Yes. So it's so funny, Dean, if you're ever in the Okanagan, we have to show you around. So it's like a few blocks from our house where this vineyard comes from, right by the lake. Weirdest place for a vineyard. In between houses, like 1 acre. It's the craziest thing. But oh my God, the rosé is so good. And your rosé is the closest thing I've ever had to that one, like in terms of the flavor profile and stuff. So it's fascinating. Right. And it's so good. So good.
Send me a bottle so I can put them in a blind tasting and I'll compare them.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just making that up, and it just means that I like them both because you have to remember, I am not a wine person. I am just a wine lover. I've only been just tasting wine. That's all I do.
You and me both. I'm just a wine lover at the end of the day.
Yeah, not a professional here or anything, but so we'll have to send you that, and that's, I think, a huge compliment because that is a phenomenal rosé, and so is yours. And the other thing I have to mention is we took your 2006 Stratus White. Now, white wines, I don't know that much about wine myself, but I know that really, like, white wines are not usually built to age.
Yeah, that's ageable for sure.
But we had your 2006 Stratus White alongside a bunch of international wines and a bunch of Canadian wines, including the 1988 Chateau de Cam, right, Carl?
Yep.
And that 2006 Stratus White was drinking beautifully.
Well, I mean, that was the star of the show. Like it was like it got so much attention from the guests around the table. It was for how expressive it was. That's for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah, that was something we were lucky from day one. You know, the team at Stratus, Suzanne, JL, decided to put wines back for aging so we could, you know, in the early days when Stratus opened, there was a lot of lofty expectations. People looked at the building and sort of where we're going with winemaking quality and price point and sort of said, you know, can Niagara really deliver? You know, the aspirations of the winery are there, but can the terroir and Niagara, the climate, deliver on what they say they're going to do? So, you know, Suzanne and JL said, well, bet. we'll put some away and we're going to release this again in 20 years, 30 years and show people. And, white wines, I guess in commercialization of winemaking, what we know today, the Pinot Grigios of the world, or, where people kind of went, yeah, they're not meant for aging. They're more simply made, but the Stratus whites, where, what JL was known for making wine, these wines normally have amazing aging, 20 years, 30 years down the line, and they just get better and better and better. And so I'm super lucky now to be the winemaker here in 2020, going into 2025 with a library of all these wines that we release. We release every single month. We have a thing called the last drop. And so every month on the sales team, Suzanne puts together a wine that's 10 plus years old in an email that goes out to the last drop, and people get to buy the last 6 or 7 cases of that last drop wine. And it's a
I
big part of
love
our
it.
business. It's a really big part of our business. I don't know what I would do without it, because so many people will taste our wines now and challenge and say, "This is an amazing wine, but I'm not sure the longevity. It's Niagara, after all." And then I say, "Okay, well, you know what? We actually have a bottle of a 2012 over there, or 2007. Let's go try that." And then people are like, "Okay, actually, I'll take a case right now, the 2012." And
Well,
their
I mean,
mind,
because we're talking about it, how about, like, I mean, right here, that guy, whoops, not this one, right
yeah,
here.
you got it right
That's
there,
the
2012,
2012. That's the
12 red. There
2012
you go. Exactly.
Stratus Red. I
Yeah,
mean, I taste over 12, between 1,200 and 1,500 Canadian wines every year. This is my top 5 wine that I've tasted this year.
yeah,
I can count on this hand the amount of wine who get to that level.
yeah,
To that
yeah,
level. This is absolutely incredible. We're at 12, 13 years now into that process. This has another decade to go. There's no problem. I can see this going another 10 years, no problem to go on the tertiary, because the tertiary haven't even started yet.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're lucky. We're lucky we had the means and the foresight from the sales and marketing team to say, let's keep these wines and show people what they're like in 20 years, or 30 years, and we'll still keep more and more. So you'll see that 2012 pop up again in another decade, and we'll talk about this again and see, has it gotten even better. That'll be the fun part.
That would be the fun part. Absolutely. I give it a 95 points. It's incredibly
Great.
complex, so well layered, and the texture is amazing. So, and this was Cabernet Sauvignon dominant.
Yep.
So is there a strategy when you get to the Stratus Red, which grape is going to be dominant? Is there a recipe, or it's Mother Nature and it's the gut feeling of you and JL when blending? Say that should be the blend.
You know what? It's all blind. So we never know what we're tasting. We just make different blend sheets, and we taste 3 at a time. We taste A, B, C, and we pick a winner, right? Or flight 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. And then we do the next flight, the next flight, the next flight. We pick the winner of all the flights. And then we put all the winners together and we pick a winner. We look at what that is. The next day we break it all down and we start over again. And so we keep doing that every day. And it just, so by pure, just by flavor and by knowledge and everything that we've been doing over the years, the warmer years, the 2020s, the 2012, 10, 7s, they tend to be more Cab Sauv dominant, because Cab Sauv in a spectacular year makes an absolutely exceptional wine. It's hard to beat Cab Sauv in an amazing year in Niagara, but you only get 4 of those years out of 10. And the other 6, Cab Franc tends to be the dominant variety, because Cab Franc does so well in Niagara year after year after year. And so that's sort of, it's all blind, but it's just, at the end, in a 2012 like year, you look at what the winning wine was after all these trials, and we do this over the course of about a month. And wine reference 7A is the winner, and it happens to be 42% Cabernet Sauvignon, and that happens in the warm years. And in the cool years, it happens to be Cab Franc, and in the wetter years, it tends to be. Next year we'll talk about the 2021 when we taste that. It tends to be more Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Tannat, because these varieties have a lot of structure, tannin, and color, and they really stand up in the wetter years. So it's totally done blind, and I don't do it purposely or set out to do it that way. It's just the way that our winemaking turns out to be in the art of assemblage. And this is kind of what Bordeaux is known for 500 years, is that every year is a different story, and varieties have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's why it's so amazing to blend them together, to take
How
advantage of all
many
of it.
for a big like Stratus Red? How many trial? How many different wine do you think you taste to get to the final? To get to the final, this one, right? This is the
Yeah, yeah.
one.
Well, I can tell you in 2013, it took 15 weeks. And I only know that because we came out with another wine eventually, and the original name of that wine was Reference 13. So every week we start out with a new reference wine that we're trying to be. So reference one, reference two. So reference 13 ended up being another wine. And so I always remember 2013 because we came out with this wine which started off as this code name Reference 13, came up in week 13. And we took it
Oh,
to
God's
we took it to
sake.
marketing. We tasted it with Suzanne, we tasted it with Charles Baker. We had Reference 13 we were so excited about, and they're like, we really love this wine, but not for Stratus Red. We have another idea for that wine. Can you still make a Stratus Red and make a different wine? We were like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, in 13,
for fuck's
13 weeks of
sakes.
tasting, we were like in June basically. It was almost like we were getting like to the wire. We were gonna have to bottling was coming up in 2 months. We had to make a wine. And so we reference 13 turned out to be a product we called Weather Report. It's since become discontinued and replaced with the Alto series, but we made 15 weeks and we went back to the drawing board for 2 more weeks and we finally knocked out of the park Stratus Red 2013.
Oh wow, what a segue. So okay, because if I don't
So
if I
yeah,
don't talk about that wine, I'm
the
gonna be in big
Alto.
trouble. I'll tell you one thing.
Yes.
So yes, she was fascinated by that wine, and I was too. Because I mean, when you look at the list of the grape varietal used for that is absolutely fascinating. So
Yeah.
Alto, it's not a wine that's found on the market. You guys have this is a licensee focus. It's for restaurants. You guys try to bring a well-priced, unique wine who will really represent your brand, what you're doing in some of the best table of the Toronto market.
Yeah, absolutely. Toronto or anyone who's willing to put it on a restaurant. Could be USA, could be Vancouver, could be Quebec City. Anyone who's willing to put it on a restaurant table, you can have some Alto.
Awesome.
And I tell you, it's a great traction because the offer has been out since yesterday, and we see some Alto in every offer, and people double up, triple up what
Yeah.
they're ordering this week. So it's a very fascinating.
I'm
Let's
happy
talk
to chat.
about what's the effect, like where's the idea coming to blend white grape varietals into a red blend.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to inspiration from traveling again. 2 summers ago, me and Jail on separate trips both went to Portugal. And me and Jail are always competing. Nowadays, we compete for the best trip, the coolest places we visited, and the coolest ideas. That's what we love to talk about. And we both came back from the end of the summer trips in Portugal and talked about our biggest inspiration, what we saw. And both of us amazingly said what we really enjoyed was these chilled reds, which were blended with white and red varieties. And so it was kind of like, oh, we both went on trips. We both went to Portugal, and we both had these refreshing red wines, which was unusual because Portugal has a really warm climate these days. 40 plus degrees you can find, in the Dow and Douro and South, in Alentejo. So both times, when you're a winemaker thinking about acidity and freshness, we were both sort of piqued our interest. How are they making reds with such good freshness and acidity? And what we were finding is a lot of blending of white wine, but traditional Portuguese varieties, into the reds that give good acidity. And we both thought, well, you know what? If you think to the history, you think of Tuscany, you think of south of France. This is always, making white wine into red wine has always been part of the culture. It kind of wasn't until the Parkerization years, think about Super Tuscans fighting back against that, wanting to go to purely red wines, where the world really moved to saying red wine is red wine, and white wine is white wine. But for thousands of years before that, no one cared. People put white into reds because it made a better wine sometimes. And that's the Alto wine at the end of the day. The inspiration is how can we make a more fruit-driven red wine with great acidity, great freshness, great texture, and you just can't get all of that from red varieties. Sometimes you need some white wine, which also have their own texture, their own acidities. And so we started the art of assemblage, and sure enough, we came up with this, fantastic wine that achieved all these goals we were hoping to hit. And we're also looking for a wine that has different versatilities for food. A lot of winemaking that you find in North America, in Italy and stuff, are really to European, Italian, French foods and things like that. And we were looking for a wine that can go with Asian foods, with spice, Indian food, and white and red together probably achieves a wine that helps do that a little bit better.
And Dean, like, listen, I was describing that wine and I was tasting that wine with my sheet and my tasting notes. And I kept saying, I fucking love that wine. I fucking love that wine. And Mira says, how about you put that in your tasting notes? So I start to laugh and I put some tasting notes together. So I sent my tasting note for proofing. And it ended up, if Mira can put the tasting notes in the comments here, look at how everything, all our tasting notes are starting. That's pretty kind of funny because she's going
This
to
is
put
like
it
get to
right
the
there.
chat.
I'm just finding it now, but he's right. I was like, well, I'm not going to edit out the swear word. I mean, we're not on.
It's got to go in, right? That was your
Yeah,
main
it's
tasting
18
note. How
plus
can you
anyway,
remove the
right?
main portion?
So yeah, easy drinking. There you go.
So I
Easy
have to
drink.
say something, okay? So we have been looking, and I know members are like, if you find it, let us know for that 100-point wine. I don't know if it will ever happen, but someone in BC apparently gave 100 points to the first red blend in Canada to the Oculus 2020 from Mission Hill, just like last week or something. And I looked at the tasting notes. I was so disappointed. I was like, what kind of tasting notes are these going to be? It's going to be like, in my 50-year career, in my travels to 80 countries, I have never found a wine like this. No, it was like just the most basic tasting notes I've ever seen. So, Carl, whenever you find that 100-point wine,
the notes left something to be desired.
Yeah, exactly, right. Tell me if I forget anything, but there's okay. Cap Franc, Merlot. There, I know there's
It's complex.
Sangiovese,
Yeah,
Tanat.
Sangiovese in there. We're trying to get some Tempranillo in there, different textures. So using different varieties in there to achieve different acidities and different textures to make a more complex wine. And then we build this mouthfeel and complexity, and then we come and refine it with a bit of Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, and get that in there with some freshness and some acidity.
Yeah, it's incredible. And $29. $29. I mean,
including tax.
We give
that's
it away.
what topped the whole thing, right? You're like, okay, it's intriguing, it's fun, it's fucking delicious. There's everything, and it's $29. I'm like, okay, you guys are absolutely bang on.
So for people in BC or who buy BC wine, this is like a $24 BC wine.
Yeah. So is that what it is? $24? Does that change in BC? Is it
25? It's a 15% tax on wine here. So
okay.
Wow. Yeah, and the wines are always advertised before tax. So so there's a big difference there.
I have to come visit BC more often. That's amazing. The cool thing about that wine that makes it very versatile is the chilled aspect. So you can put this wine in the fridge and chill it down, and it really adds another essence. That's the design of this wine is to be served cooler than you would normally have a red wine. It reminded me of my grandmother when I was a kid. Used to put her ice in her wine, and I thought she was crazy, but I started to think, and we started drinking wine at 16 degrees, but people were drinking wine colder in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That's how wine was consumed. So she wasn't crazy to put ice in the wine. It just no one was chilling the red wines the way she liked them back then.
Yeah, I will let you go, but I'm not doing that until we talk about the flagship, the new release of the new flagship. It's the 2021.
And we're going to have to tease people a little bit with this because this is something pretty.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do the Stratus Red, and then we'll finish on the decanter.
Yeah.
We'll go all out with the fireworks.
Exactly. So yeah, the 2021 is a brand new release. I gave it a 94 points. I mean, even in a tough year, because we're talking about, I mean, let's be realistic here. 21 was a bitch of a vintage with the rain in the fall and everything. But this wine, it's probably from the 21 Niagara, my very favorite flagship wine of the vintage. So what's the main? Let's talk about the blend here. We're talking, like you mentioned, Franc dominant. This one because it's not that iconic vintage. So Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot at 18%, Malbec, Tanat, Syrah, and Cab Sauv.
So you notice the Petit Verdot, the Malbec, and Tanat, how much of the wine? I think it's above 30%. Those three varieties together are making up 30% of the wine.
Yeah.
So it speaks to how those varieties are doing. 21 was an interesting year because it was amazing summer. 21 was amazing all the way up until about September 25th, and then it started to rain. But what we just did is we practiced our patience, and we waited and we waited and we waited, and we mostly did harvest in 2021 in December. So we waited for the rains to pass, for the cooler weather to get there, and for things to slow down a little bit, and for the maturation to catch back up. And so it ended up making an incredible wine, and that shows to JL's experience over the years is what you need to do in these years. in the wetter years, Niagara is having, you know, ups and downs all the time. And the only way to really get good at it is to have a much larger, you know, plot of your experience. And then you start to say, oh, this year is similar to, you know, JL was pulling out years like, oh, this is like 1991. And I'm like, well, I was 2. So I don't remember 1991,
I
but
was
luckily
playing with
JL did.
truck in the
And he
sand
remembered
in
what
the
he did
sand
know.
pit.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that speaks to the experience of how you can make great wines. And a lot of times in the challenging years, you just got to stick to the really good wineries because they still know how to get through those challenging years.
And you know, I have a fun story about the 21 because I was in Niagara Labor Day weekend, and at Bellaterra they were harvesting for Blanc de Blanc that weekend, and Lou was saying, "Cart, the numbers are on par with last year," which he
Yeah,
was
yeah,
referring to 2020. So at
yeah.
that stage, at Labor Day, numbers in the vineyard were on par with what some people call the vintage of the century. So we're
Yeah.
right. 2021 was on its way to be another fantastic vintage until boom, the rain starts.
There's a really famous or an article is famous in my mind of a quote from Mia that same Labor Day weekend, and quoting saying, "So far, we're on track to having maybe one of the best years in Niagara ever, as long as the weather cooperates." And quite quickly, the weather stopped cooperating. So I kind of maybe preempted that one to happen. I hope not, but maybe.
So that's for the 2021. You guys absolutely nailed it. That's the Stratus for 2021. I put in my note between 26 and 35. I mean, this wine to me as a wine taster, I mean, yeah, it's a projection. It tastes
Yeah,
good now, but you know that there's so much to come.
yeah.
And you see the potential. It is incredible. 94 points. It's less than 5% of the wine that I rate every year that it's our 94 plus. This is cream of the cream. And wow, what a tremendous job. Really,
Yeah.
really, really impressed with that.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope everyone else does too.
I hope because it's worth it. Some people will say I try to avoid flagship from 21, but my message is no, you need to taste. Yeah, like I'm telling you,
From the
this one is really
iconic
worth it.
iconic places, you know, they know what they're doing and they make good wines in even the challenging years.
Absolutely. And the
All
last
right,
one,
let's drop it down. Look at that thing.
look at that thing. And Suzanne was telling me it's the only one in the world. I mean, there's no
We got the
other.
patent. If you see another one that doesn't say Stratus on it, you let me know because I'm taking them to court.
You got
We
the
got the
stats
patent
on
on
the
that
bottle.
bottle. That bottle is
Wow.
designed by Kareem Rashid, a world famous designer who just designed some beautiful pieces from all around the world. Just look up Kareem Rashid and you'll see the design. And so we call that the decant. It's kind of a deconstructed hock bottle, and we make Cab Franc only in there, and we bottle it with the lees, and then the edges there. Actually, Carl, bring it back over. Let's see the edges so everyone can see what I'm going to describe. So we have the edges on that bottle. They hold back the lees, so that's the idea of the decant. So when you pour the bottle, if you hold it in your hand there and you would pour it out, other direction actually, yeah, you hold it like that, yeah, boom. The edges catch the lees and decant the wine, and so that's how we came up with the name decant. And it all happened fluidly. I wish I could say we were so good that we all went to a drawing board and we drew that bottle and we said the leads. It was like we saw the bottle, we thought about Cab Franc would be good for it, and we started saying maybe some on the leads because we were making it in those years. And then suddenly, you know, it was JL or somebody said, it wasn't me, I wish it was, but I can't take the credit, said the edges would be perfect for decanting out the leaves and we should call it decant. Probably it was Suzanne's idea to call it decant. Great name. And we ended up with this wine that's one of the coolest looking bottles you'll find in the world of wine. And the great thing is that wine bottle is made in Spain from a company called Estelle, and it's they're using recycled glass in making that bottle. So it's got a component of recycled, reused cullet, we call it. So very sustainable, fantastic design, and inside, hopefully, the wine stands up to the package.
Incredible because it's full circle. We're going to close that up with the full circle because you guys were the first Canadian led certified winery. You guys are fully certified organic and all of that, right?
Sustainable, so or certified sustainable. The organic stuff we practice maybe one day, but you know, the certified. We were a founding member of Sustainable Wine Growing Ontario, but the first in Canada to come out with a reused bottle, which was really cool. Which you had the Petit Verdot Malbec Tanat Field Blend when you were down here last time.
Yeah, the
Very cool.
PVMC.
And with our members, we learned so much about that and like concrete and how they use glass in the concrete and they can't use that anymore. You are an incredible wealth of knowledge. I love it. I already have Lorna in for the international tour with Dean Stoyka and Carl's Wine Club, where we can go and taste wines and learn from you all over the world.
Please
some
come
point.
down. And I'll come visit you sometime soon. I promise.
That would be
Hey,
great.
you are a guest of honor. Tomorrow, or but not tomorrow, early next week, I'll send you a bottle of Pinot Noir, Tractor and Vine Rosé for your enjoyment. And we've talked about it. We're bringing the Pan Canadian Masterclass 3.0 back to Niagara next summer, June 21st. We'll be held at Siouan Staff. We want to have you part of that lineup this year.
Yeah.
We want you, Dean.
We're ready.
Yeah, it's time. We've been together now for 2 years, for like doing a bunch of cool stuff. We want you guys part of the Pan Canadian next year. So we'll 100%. Talk more about that soon. That's for sure.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much
Dean,
for having me.
Thank you for your time. It's been amazing.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in and hearing about our project here in Niagara.
Oh, it's fantastic, Dean. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Carl.
It's been a long day.
You need some rest.
We'll let you go. But thank you again.
Thank you for having
me.
It was
amazing.
Great.
So great.
Take care.
Wow. So lucky.
So amazing. Once in a while we're just like, yeah, that's why we do that. And I mean, a night like that, an interview like that, which he's amazing. He's amazing. One of my very favorite in the business. And the wines, it's one of our highest rated feature that we have done. These wines, 11 wines between 92 and 95 points, some flagship wines, some incredible blend, some incredible purity of single varietal, some value wine at $29, which you can't find anywhere, some exclusive library release. Listen, that 2012 Stratus Red, it's a treat. It's an absolute beauty. Unfiltered Chardonnay on his seat. Hey, I have to tell you a secret, okay? Don't tell anyone. I just poured that, okay? This bottle doesn't have a lid on. Okay, there's no cork put on for now 48 hours. I was not planning to taste it. I just had a smell while I was talking. It smelled delicious. And it still tastes amazing without the cork on, fully open for 48 hours.
What?
Dean was talking about these are talking about the leaves, how the leaves protect the wine against oxidation and like the oxidative level. Like,
last time something like that happened, I think it was an Ice Cellars red, like one of their big reds.
Yeah, but like not as long, like 48 hours with no cork, nothing on. Nothing on.
There's something special, like you said, about that site, but also the way that they do things. Like the whole culture at Stratus is fascinating. Even the fact that he's saying they have regular meetings, tasting wine with their marketing team and talking about that wine. I love that because you know what? Terroir includes people, it includes talents, and it's the talents not just of the winemakers, but the whole team. Like including the marketing and salespeople, especially, I think, because that's how the wine gets communicated to everyone else, which is such an important part of wine, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's pretty incredible. Hey, you have a gym opening that you have to go to.
Yeah. So our kids' high school gym has just reopened. Exciting news here in Summerland. So
yeah. And I have to drive all the way down to Oliver, so which is over an hour from home, and it's it'll
be great.
So because the why all of that is because we're doing a taste and buy event tomorrow in Vancouver with a bunch of realtor. So our friend Clay Martin, who runs the BC Wine Reviews as a realtor in like his office and all. Anyway, so we're going down there and we're going to taste 7, maybe more wines from Niagara, from the Okanagan. We're going to have an incredible wine tasting with them tomorrow with some fun blind tasting and all that. So I have to stop by and go see Rob Amersley at Black Market to pick up some wines as well. So it's a fun event happening. Yeah. One of the wine who's going to be featured tomorrow at that event is Dow Wine, Laning Post, the Cuvée Winona. When we talk about the $29, like just like this one, Incredible value. Merlot Cab Franc was so good. So anyway, I'm excited to go down to Vancouver tomorrow, but to the lower mainland and meet with all of these people. You, Cars Wine Club members, can put together a taste and buy event for your company, for your friends or whatever. If you're 20 or 30 people or more, let me know. We can go to you and we can organize something for you.
Yeah. And
So
best
yeah.
of all is if it's within driving distance of where we are in the Okanagan, it is complimentary, which is really cool.
Exactly. So yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's going to be a fun evening tomorrow. Go ahead, Mira.
I wanted to say, speaking of fun ways to support Canadian wineries, but have a ton of fun, we're doing an advent calendar this year. So we'll be going live every day for 12 days before Christmas. And if you've ordered the mystery 6 or 12 advent pack, you can actually unwrap each day a different wine and hear from that winery or winemaker with us. So we're going to travel across Canada with that. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And members have until Monday or so to get those orders in, because those are going to get packed up in the next week or two and shipped out. It'll be lots of fun.
All across the country, absolutely. So yeah, what a show! Incredible.
Amazing.
Watch out for the rest of the
really get into this part, but the members that were there with us a couple months ago, remember, like, it's a fascinating story of how they do things. Each of these amphora at Stratus have a very specific purpose, very specific, like,
shape,
temperature and shape, and that all impacts the wines. And so that's fascinating. Same thing they do with all their barrels, their different vessels. So yeah, the art of assemblage, he mentioned it a couple times, but yeah, it really is like a very sophisticated artist in their studio figuring out how they're going to apply those brush strokes essentially to a masterpiece, right? Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So what an amazing time with Dean. I have to give a shout out to Suzanne as well, which Suzanne. Sorry with French accent here. Suzanne, which leads the team at the winery. She's so freaking amazing to deal with, and she always have great ideas. She's organized. She gets everything done properly. It's such a pleasure to have them as a partner this week. So if you're looking for cool gift or just to fill your cellar with some incredible wines, we have 11 wines available this week. Check this out from exclusive library release from a 95 points 2012, the Stratus Red, from the new release of the 2021 Stratus White, the 22 Stratus White, the 21 Stratus Red. Also, the Field Blend, a 2016 traditional method Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. There's some, and one of Mira's favorite rosés that she's tasted ever, the 2023 Gamay Rosé. Incredible lineup. So yeah, it's worth it to give it a try, give it a taste, give it a look. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I know we have a couple members that have already bought these decant bottles for gifts. They make a stunning gift if you know.
And they are all coming with that white box, that white display box branded.
It like
Stratus.
opens up like a display case. It's very fancy. It's very cool. And the only one in the world like that. Like you said, it's an award-winning design. Yeah. So
yeah.
Very special.
Absolutely. So yeah.
But let's not forget the Alto Red, only available here this week, and you can get it for $29, including tax.
Yeah, you can't find that wine anywhere else.
Because there's so much variety that there's something for everyone. If you love what they're doing and you want to get in at an accessible price point, well, you got that Alto Red. Some of the whites are very accessible, and there's free shipping, right? Free shipping for Ontario, Quebec, but also free shipping everywhere for $3.50 plus. And if it's less than that, I think it's $15 shipping, which is a lot less for certain provinces than it would normally be. So it's a really
these days, what is $15 for shipping? It's a steal of a deal.
Well, because the price of gas, it's like going to Costco and back. I mean, the gas for that is $15 probably. So
I know. Okay.
yeah. Well, it's great to see everyone. Thanks for stopping by. And
these wines are available until Sunday, right?
yes.
You're going to hear from us. You're going to see our post on social media. But yeah, 92 to 95 points, 11 wines available. Give it take a look. And yeah. So Mira, another incredible show. To all of the Stratus fan who's all listening, we say good night to you, to all of our very, very valuable Carl's Wine Club members across the country. We say good night to everyone. And Mira Boucher, thanks for a great show. See you next time.
Have a great night, guys. Cheers.